Short answer is these stages. AKA arenas, AKA combat zones. Remember when they called combat zones? Can we bring that back? That was a cool name. I think I fished they're called arenas now, but better known as stages. I know some people call them levels as well, which is a bit odd, but I suppose that's a valid name. But yeah, these are all things. The locations you fight in, which nobody talks about anymore, nobody cares about anymore. Because the theming and the gameplay of them was ruined or taken away. I think that's specifically why the major factor, at least, on why 3D MK is better than 2D MK. Fundamentally, 3D Mortal Kombat has more potential, and I think the stage design is the key to it. You have so many stages in games like Armageddon as well, and each one entirely unique. There's the Conquest stages, they don't have any interactables, but they're still unique in shape and layout, and they still have good theming, like these ones. There's so many. It is really insane. And nowadays we get an insulting amount of stages, considering how much more unimportant they are when the gameplay is 2D. Now, this isn't an knock against 2D fighting games, but fundamentally, the stage design is nowhere near as important. It even goes to the older 2D games. For example, on the bank stage, you can break people through the ceiling and take them to the roof stage. And of course, the arcade games had really cool backgrounds, very good detail, very good theming, great music, and these same aesthetic positives continued over into the 3D era. MK4, not so much. Graphically, it was just so impressive for the time, but that one's aged not as well. But I still think at the time it would have been good theming. And again, it was trying a lot, with the different movements, bigger space. The franchise was evolving, right? And then 2011 happens, and we get this fucking shit. By the way, this stage is the only original stage in this entire game, and it's just a generic dojo. Everything else comes from the trilogy games, and quite frankly, I prefer the arcade era graphics. I think they represent the stages better, and they're more faithful. Honestly. And you go from Armageddon to this. Armageddon, which had way more stages, and each one was uniquely interactable, with the exception of the Conquest stages. And now we just go back to backgrounds. At least MKX brings interactables back, but it's just this. Something flashes white, and you press a button and you can do something with it, like throw a Tarkana at someone. And that's all cool. These are cool little things that do make each stage unique again, but they aren't important anymore. There's no major factor, and it's nowhere near as cool as what we once had. And another annoying thing is, Injustice has stage transitions being a concept created in fighting games by Mortal Kombat. And yet Mortal Kombat doesn't get these stage transitions anymore. Yet Injustice does. It's really insulting. That's another thing, like the theming, if we go back to that. The glow-ups in the remade stages in the 3D games were much better. Particularly Armageddon Subway here. That was incredible, being in 3D, because you would hit people onto the train tracks. On top of all the interactables like destructible benches, your combos, you could slam people up on the ceiling, just bonk their head up there. There was so much immersion and just so many little things in each stage. And now, this is what we get? Shit like Retrocade? Seriously? In some actual remakes? Now, to be fair, MK11 does have remakes. There's a remade Soldier and a remade Deadpool, but they're not faithful to the original. They practically completely different outside of the Deadpool's notable acid bath and The Soul Chamber's, well, Soul Chamber. The rest of the stage is completely different. In fact, the Soul Chamber is more comparable to the church stage from MK3. So not only are we getting a lack of gameplay, but like visually, besides visually, they're not doing the aesthetics as well, in my opinion, at least. Of course, graphically, these are much better, but that's just the times. I'm really just the times. If you go to any point in time, like I mentioned with MK4, it doesn't look great now. MK9 does not look great now. By the time they look good. Actually, no, MK9 doesn't. That was kind of dated at the time. But everything else, very like graphically impressive. That was always MK's thing, good visuals and whatnot. That's always something you can't knock an MK game for. The graphics are always good. But due to this need to get good graphics, we lose stages. Like the stage selections are much smaller. There's less interactivity, and the theming's worse. Like seriously, MKX here, look at these. You have a boring courtyard that doesn't even feel like Outworld. You have another generic hell stage. You have just a forest. You have the pit, which is a perfectly solid remake, but nothing crazy, nothing that reinvents the thing. It's just like the MK9 one, really. Again, a 3D era remake would change it because it's a completely different gameplay style. Then you have just a random destroyed city. You have a random jungle. You have a marketplace that, again, doesn't feel like Outworld. You have a random cove. You have a very dull Special Forces camp. Jinsei Chamber's cool. I won't knock Jinsei Chamber. You have Conchi's Fortress, which doesn't resemble Day Alliance's Fortress at all. You have the Sky Temple, which, again, does not resemble past versions of the Sky Temple at all. The Sky Temple, which used to have a crazy death trap where you knock someone off the 600 and whatever foot tall building, and their body explodes when he lands on the thing. Very cool. It also had a Warhammer weapon, which was like Raiden's lightning conductor. And you know these little bits of lore because they had descriptions for the stages in Deception. Something that was quickly never brought back. Deadly Alliance 2, I believe, had them. Armageddon has like some, but it's very selective, and then just non-existent with the stage bios in future games. So none of these are pretty significant. You have the Linkway Temple, which has a statue of a guy no one knows, and then just a generic training room. This is by far the worst selection in MK, and it's why the game is so forgettable to me. It's visually dull as fuck, and all the environments are ass. And of course stages aren't everything, but there's something, and that's what's been forgotten. People do not talk about stages. When you look at like people talking about the new Mortal Kombat game, Mortal Kombat 12, no one's talking about the stage selection or like what stage is going to be and how many stages we're getting. That's not a point in discussion because they're not relevant anymore. When they used to be so much more, and they used to be so much more important. Music is another thing that's fell off. There's not a single track I can remember in MK9, MKX, and especially MK11. A game which I have well over 1,000 hours on, which is an embarrassing amount of time. That's shameful. But yeah, I don't remember anything from those games. Yeah, I can remember the tracks from the arcade era games just fine, despite hardly ever playing them. But seriously, it is crazy amount of stuff we lost. This is just Armageddon. You have Deception too. They actually had a few interactable stuff like the acid Buddhas and just some destructible assets which continue in the future games because the games were evolving. Stuff wasn't removed like MK9. Just goes back to backgrounds. I have a whole list of stuff that was removed in MK9 or MK vs DC. MK vs DC still had the stage interactables, however. So it is a real shame, but there's so many cool death traps, so many cool short but effective animations. Some are goofy, they have the violence in them. It's much better than stage fatalities, which we still get now. Like MK11 added them in an update. They added like free, just free. It's I think MKX did the same thing too, like just free. Like it is a pathetically low amount for an animation you can only trigger on a certain stage. Whereas here, they matter the gameplay. You want to stay away from them, or you want to get your opponent into them. You know, and it's easier. It's easier said than done. You know, people will talk about how these were broken, right? Like how death traps were so unfair, or whatever, which was a concern I merely had before I got into these games. It does come across that way. But guess what? You can turn it off in the setting. And same applied for online. There's an option online. I play online now, and I play it with death traps on because death traps aren't a big deal. You know, a lot of stages don't even have them, and the stages that do, they're quite hard to get to. The easiest ones are like the pit or the falling cliff stage, you know, in Deception and Unchained. And you know, that's the thing, like they vary in difficulty to achieve them because each stage is unique. But yeah, they really weren't unfair. They were avoidable. It was just like literally the falling cliffs. Cliffs, I'd say, is like the only major exception, and I'll show you why. So they weren't broken. They weren't unfair. Like even if I get hit in them, it doesn't annoy me. Like that's entirely on you if you get put in a death trap. You know, because they are on the size of the stages. A lot of stages are very wide. They have a variety of shapes and sizes. Because guess what? You have that ability when it's not just 2D. You can have whatever shapes you want. That's why even the conquest stages that you unlock in Armageddon, they stand out because it's still a different layout, even if there is no interactables in those stages. I mean, yeah, there was just so many unique stages, multi-tier with the stage interactables, and let's not even forget stage weapons. Nothing has been lost. You know, they certainly were the least important thing that the 3D games introduced, but they were something. They were there, and they weren't useless. Although a lot of people say they are, it was a very risk-reward thing, and definitely some stage weapons are better than others. But either way, it's a good mechanic. It shouldn't be removed. Regardless of what you think on the 3D gameplay as a whole, like even if you don't like it for whatever reason, there is no denying this is far superior to just having backgrounds. This has so much more potential. You know, like talk about the classic stage, like the bank and you know the rooftop. You could bring that back. You could find the rooftop. There could be a death trap, like knocking them off the roof. You could have an elevator as a stage transition. You find the elevator for a bit, then you can get kicked out onto the rooftop. You know, you could play like some elevator music. That's like classic music in it, MK music and shit. And look, falling cliffs. You know, unique gimmick where the cliffs fall apart and you can fall on the spikes. And then yeah, like in the bank, you can go outside. However, that takes you to the street. You can cross the road, get into the subway, and on the way you try and cross the road. Cars can hit you. That triggers a pop up. You know, like that is a concept I have. That's basically 4 stages in one. You know, and incredible remake potential there. You know, for one, and just general new stages, new ideas. There was so much cool stuff. Yin Yang Island, for example, like so many great stages, and none of the 3D original ones ever returned. They just never did, alongside most of the characters. It is fucking shameful what happened to a really good trilogy of games that were progressing the franchise forward, whether you like them or not. And how everything that happened to him was immediately undid by the so-called savior of the franchise, MK9. And, you know, let's not just pretend that it was just the death traps. Interactables like smashing that window, triggering that stage transition, taking you to basically a stage. These corpse things. You can look at Check's YouTube. You can find so many combos dedicated to just using the corpse mechanics, using the corpse stuff. Like those corpse physics offered so much in terms of just silliness, just iconicness, and just fucking around in practice mode. You know, It's stuff like that that's so fun. Just the little things. And especially when, look at this stage. This is a follow-up to the Nevership stage from Deadly Alliance. Nevership has a ton of lore. It's like Shanks on the ship. And now we get to see the interior of it. Like the stage ideas were unreal. Now what do we get? A car on this ship? Like, fuck off. In comparison to this, like, car on ship, fucking irrelevant, mate. Everyone was excited, like, oh, the Nevership's coming back. When that was first shown, I think Alexa's trailer first had that stage shown. And then, yeah, no, it wasn't even that. It's just really sad how we lost all this. So yeah, you had the death traps, you had the stage interactables, you had the stage weapons, the stage transitions, like everything here. In fact, you can keep expanding on it. And we never got to see it expand past Armageddon. Because Midway went under. You know, no fault of Mortal Kombat. No fault of the franchise at all. That was the only thing keeping Midway afloat. So it's a shame how many people will look down on these games for just completely insufficient reasons, just poor reasoning all round, and then celebrate shit like MK9, which removed all this gone on top of the various reductions on various things, various content, and for what exactly? Tag team mode, which lasted a whole game, like seriously, what do we benefit from going back to 2D MK? Seriously, like Mortal Kombat came back to Evo, like, and this game has never been known to be a fucking balanced fighting game, and even then MK9 was never balanced. MKX is kind of balanced now, and he took about 20 fucking patch updates. Like, it is absurd how, like, we're actually going to act like, hey, we shouldn't have this interactivity, all these features and stuff, because people just disregard it all because they just want some core fighting gameplay, which, fair enough, but that's not what Mortal Kombat is. It's not just about that. If it was just about that, I would not give a fuck about it, you know? Like so much, we lost so much, and it is just a shame. I made a whole other video on why 3D era stages are so important, but like specifically compared to 2D, like how important they were, how they made each fight completely different. Each stage had a different gimmick, essentially, you know. And here's the last thing I'll leave you on, and that's quite simply, if you wanted your 2D nostalgia, 3D gameplay has the capabilities to achieve that. You can have stages dedicated to being very narrow, like another Pit remake, except it's an actual bridge again. And just on that little platform, you can't move up and you can't move down. You could do the inputs for your moves, but yeah, you can only move left and right. That's something that could be entirely possible. That is no one out of the region. It could even be a setting, although obviously stages are designed around being 3D, you know, so work better if you are dedicated to 2D style stages. Like that is entirely possible, but do you know what's not possible? Adding 3D gameplay to this. I think that concept alone, like these concepts I presented, and just the stuff that we actually got with the stages, like, it offers way more. It's so much more potential. And yeah, no, we just regressed back to this. Something that MK has grown out of in MK4, essentially, and went full 3D only a decade into its life. That change saved the franchise. If we didn't have Deadly Alliance's grand change, we wouldn't have this game that everyone acts like it's a masterpiece. So yeah, that's why I stand by the fact. Well, it's not a fact, but the fact I stand by these 3D games is because of all this, you know, and all that was lost, and just specifically these stages, and how they really made the games feel special. And I don't think people understand that unless they played it. How iconic the Deception Armageddon stages are, how brilliant they played, how unique they were. I reset my deception save just so I could get like better preset towers to get more of the unique stages instead of the chess combat ones. You know, to show up in my tower thing. Like that's how important they are. You know, they were at a level of importance where the stage selection, in terms of gameplay, is as important as the characters. And now stages aren't relevant. We lost a major part of the core gameplay because we went back to 2D, amongst so many other things. Again, I point to this list. So, yeah, well, I have other points to make. I think the biggest one really was the loss of stages, at least when it comes to the gameplay. You know, and I say as someone who thinks 2D MK does work. MK11, for me personally, proved that. I don't think 9 and X did. I think the classic games are dated, admittedly. But yeah, like 2D MK does work, but it can only take it so far, I think. I think it's way more limiting. And that goes for most franchises. Being 3D just opens more opportunities. You know? Not to say 2D games are bad, but MK, I really found its footing with 3D gameplay. Like, almost instantly, you know? Like Day and Ice had like some things that were polished on in Deception, but by Deception, just 2 years after Day and Ice, they had basically perfected the system, honestly. And of course, you come to 2011, if MK9 was actually 3D, it would be an entirely different game. Like if they kept evolving that way instead of going back for the sake of nostalgia, I guess, then I don't know what we could have had, but I feel it would have been more engaging than just here's some backgrounds, you know? Like, seriously? Besides the fact that MK did 2D before 3D, I don't think there's a reason for it. So that's specifically why I prefer 3D to 2D. So yeah, I think that's all my points. Anything to say now? Just reiterating the fact, but again, just look at how much was removed. So yeah, thank you for watching this video. Much more to come. You know, I make a lot of MK videos, which makes sense because MK12 was revealed, although a lot of it feels unassociated with that game anyway. But yeah, I'll have more videos, more commentaries. So thank you for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.